2007 Macro FRQ. In recent years, the Federal Reserve has made targeting the federal funds rate a main focus of its monetary policy. Define the federal funds rate. The federal funds rate is just an interest rate that banks charge one another when they borrow from one another. So it is just when there's bank-to-bank loans, it is the interest rate that is charged. If the Federal Reserve wants to lower the federal funds rate, what open market operation would be appropriate? The federal funds rate is just an interest rate. To lower it, the Fed would want to buy bonds. We know when the Fed buys bonds, this makes the money supply go up, which is going to drive down the price of money or the nominal interest rate. Assume that the open market operation that you indicated in Part B is equal to $10 million. If the required reserve ratio is 0.2, calculate the maximum change in loans throughout the banking system. Understand that I have a real problem. I think the answer key is wrong, and I can't remember, but I believe asking the College Board about this a long time ago, and somebody said it was incorrect. Think of it like this: if we have our T account, and if you want the maximum change in the banking system and the Fed is buying bonds of 10 million, they would buy those bonds from the banks, right? The idea is here we have liability and assets, but if this bank owns bonds of 10 million, we have required reserves and we have excess reserves. Well, if this bank owns 10 million in bonds and the Fed buys it, all of that 10 million would go right into excess reserves. Then this bank can loan out that whole 10 million. We would multiply it by our multiplier, which in this instance is 1 over 0.2. Our multiplier would be 5. So 10 million times 5, we should get a 50 million increase in the money supply. Those of you who are having a little bit of trouble with this one, that's probably what's giving you the issue, is that we would assume that not that people are buying these bonds, therefore they would go into checkable deposits, which in this instance, that would not give us a maximum change. That would be the minimum change of 40 million. But if we assume that banks own all these bonds and the Fed is buying these bonds from the bank, the whole 10 million flows into excess reserves. It's all multiplied by the multiplier, and we get 50 million. Not 40 million. Indicate the effect of the open market operation that you indicated in Part B on the nominal interest rate. We've already said when the Fed is buying bonds, let's just write it all out so we know it. When the Fed buys bonds, the money supply goes up. This is going to drive the price of money or the nominal interest rate down. If interest rates are low, people will take out more loans. That means more investment. Investment is a determinant of aggregate demand. It makes aggregate demand go up. That's going to drive up the price level. That's going to make real GDP increase. That's going to make output increase, and that's going to drive down unemployment. So this is our causal chain of thinking of an expansionary, obviously, monetary policy. Buys bonds, money supply increases, etc., etc. Assume that the Federal Reserve actions result in some inflation. Well, yes, it does. Price level goes up. What would be the impact of the open market operation on the real rate of interest? Okay, there's a couple of ways to tackle this. First of all, if they wanted us to explain, there's usually two things when we're talking about the real interest rate that we always want to talk about. One is what the nominal rate, because we know the nominal and the real tend to go in the same direction almost 99% of the time. In this instance, our nominal is going down, so we can assume our real is going down. We also know that the price level is going up. That's going to drive our real interest rate down. If we had to draw a graph about it, they didn't ask us to, but if we wanted to talk about real interest rate, we've got to talk about the loanable funds market. The loanable funds market is nothing more than money in the banks. It is the money in the banks. So if the money supply is increasing and there's more money flowing into the banks, wouldn't we expect the supply of loanable funds to increase? As the supply of loanable funds increases, it's got to drive down the real interest rate or the price of money. So Usually they're going to want you to explain it, talking about what the nominal interest rate does. The real interest rate does the same thing. And if price level's going up, obviously it's driving down real numbers or the real interest rate. We could also have shown it in a graph if we had to back up what we're saying. All right, guys, be safe. Take care. See you soon.